Joining me for the whole chat is Benjamin Butterworth, journalist and broadcaster. Good morning to you once again.
Good morning, Julia.
Lovely to see you. I want to start, though, with the Sun front page today and a poll they've carried out of red wall voters. It's crucial. This is where a lot of these seats that have got local elections, a lot don't have local elections, but they're polled voters in the North West, North East, Yorkshire, East Midlands, West Midlands. It's by Survation. And it's basically where, in last year's general election, Labour reclaimed scores of seats that they had lost back in 2019 to Boris Johnson, get Brexit done. And then those went whoosh, just literally like a pack of cards, went straight over to Labour, hence that huge majority. Well, not looking so good now for Labour's red wall. A new poll has revealed that 2/3, 68% of people in those seats think that Britain is broken and that the country is heading in the wrong direction. Just 21% saying it's going the right way. My God, if you think the country's going... Forget your personal party political views. If you genuinely think the country's going the right direction, I mean, wow, you have been living under one heavy stone in blackout conditions. But basically, people are expressing concern about immigration, about the NHS, about the economy. This comes just, the latest figures on record channel crossings, the bin strike ongoing, threat that could spread, a general feeling that things are going very badly wrong. What do you make of that poll, and what do you think Keir Starmer will be making of it, who, by the way, is rated by those polled as a less good potential Prime Minister than Nigel Farage, leader of Reform?
Yeah, and indeed, Nigel Farage leads when asked who best understands the issues that working people face.
Very telling, that.
And even on the question of the NHS, which Labour almost always is ahead in polling, well, it's ahead, but only 5 points of Nigel Farage. Now, given Nigel Farage has made comments in the past about a very different way of structuring healthcare, that's quite amazing.
I thought we were going to go, he said we should privatise the NHS. That's, again, not what he said. It was just, we could have the system that works in the rest of Europe, where they have better health outcomes and no waiting lists. I mean, that would be a crazy thing to do, wouldn't it?
Well, hopefully we'll have no waiting lists in 4 years. But I mean,
sorry, even the Labour Party has not pledged that.
Well, they're trying to get rid of the backlog of
No. They've
million,
never suggested. They've never suggested clearing the waiting list. I think their best case scenario is getting it down to half what it is.
Well, fingers crossed.
So only 3.5 million people on the waiting list for healthcare.
I mean, waiting lists are down 6 months in a row. But I think what this shows you is that, and it's quite understandable, obviously, the fact that so much stuff, it's not tangible that anything has changed. Now, I guess the Labour Party would say, and understandably, well, it's never going to happen in 9 or 10 months, whatever it's been.
And that's fair.
Yeah, of course.
But it has got a lot worse in a lot of metrics.
But I think for a lot of people, they feel like it's not been, 9 or 10 months of struggle. It's been a decade of things not being good enough, of their wages stagnating, of the council services not being good enough, of not seeing a doctor sufficiently quickly. And I guess the problem that any government would face is this idea that people don't want to put up with it any longer. And I think what's slightly worrying about this in a way is that, of course, the country isn't going in the right direction, but would we have been better if a government had just come in and spent lots of money it didn't have? How does a government justify
the government
this?
did spend a lot of money it didn't have.
Well, not this one.
Yes, it did. It spent lots of money it didn't have. It just on things that perhaps lots of other people wouldn't agree with, like, train drivers getting a pay rise. I know it's not in the multiple billions, I get that, but there's still lots more money going into public services. I mean, nothing's being cut. We're borrowing more.
Tell that to the civil servants, 120,000 of them.
No, but their spending isn't being cut. We're spending more.
True. But I think, it'll be alarming to Keir Starmer, it'll be alarming to the Labour Party.
I would have thought, especially ahead of local elections coming up in early May. I mean, this is the thing, I suppose, look, on a more positive note, ask a question I want to ask our audience today. I'd love to hear from you. What is wrong with Britain? If we're heading in the wrong direction, what specifically is it that bothers you? Cited in this poll, immigration, the NHS, the economy are by a long way the top 3 issues that voters are citing in terms of heading in the wrong direction. I want to know with you, what is wrong with Britain? And crucially, what would you do to fix it? I think a lot of us just given up on the politicians of any party to actually come up with this. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the National Radio. rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. Free on YouTube, free of course on X. So do get in touch, get your messages on air. Really gutted, we didn't get as many calls on air that I wanted to yesterday because we had so many amazing guests in the studio. Douglas Murray, Maggie Oliver among them. An absolute pleasure to have them in the studio. But I know we want to hear more from you as well. But say 2/3 of voters in Red Bull seats believe Britain is broken. It's heading in the wrong direction. What do you think? What do you think of that? And do you agree? And if so, what would you do to fix it? Benjamin, what would you do to fix it?
Great question.
He like nervous laughter.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm honest. I mean, the fact is that the money doesn't add up, right? The answer is growth, but then that's so much harder to achieve, especially in the economic environment we've had under Donald Trump. It's easier
to achieve if you don't put a tax on jobs, for instance.
But I really do think the government isn't without good logic, because the problems in things like the NHS, it's like the potholes, right? You can keep covering them up at a modest cost, or you can relay the roads and fix it for a generation. And I actually do think there was a strong logic to raising some money to actually deal with the problems properly.
I think if anyone who genuinely wanted to fix a lot of stuff in this country would actually have to be spending a lot of money on infrastructure. The thing is, no one trusts that it's going to be spent well. It tends to be spent on the wrong things, and there's no point doing any of that if you still got completely failed policies along the way. So, for instance, I don't think there's any point ploughing way more money into the NHS, given I think the system is part of the problem. You have to change the system. I don't think there's any point in ploughing, money into investment in industry and infrastructure if you're still got net zero policies which are making us poorer. There's no point saying, well, we need to raise some more money, if we want, but we're going to have growth if you are taxing jobs. I just find it extraordinary. Look. To a certain extent, Rachel Reeves has been given a get out of jail card free because she can blame all tariffs and that for where she's going to be at the autumn budget. But actually, most of it is going to be down to the choices that she made. And this is the problem of people who've never run a business, don't appear to ever talk to anyone who's ever run a business. Now, I'm not talking about people who are running M&S or
They do actually. The CEO of M&S talks to the government regularly.
Well, he needs to give a bit more advice. People who run small businesses are just about, when you actually put a tax literally on jobs, on the cost of employing the extra person, you are not going to see growth. Full stop, end of. And anyone who's worked in that world told them that, but they did it anyway. So if growth is the answer, it's also, to me, it's what you do with the growth, isn't it?
Well, one of the problems we have is that if you're under 40, a lot of the money...
Oh, he's going to go on that one again.
No, but a lot of money that you're paying is going to go on renting a property, on day-to-day costs, not on investing in your future or being able to take a risk having the money to start a business. And I think that's a fundamental problem. If I were to do something, it would be to rip up the planning rules even more.
Build more houses.
Build everywhere.
It's the motto of the show, build more houses.
Exactly. And I do actually think there are lots of problems, but that's a big structural problem that, whether you're renting or on the housing ladder, it's just so hard to have any money left after that basic cost.
Absolutely. But plus you're all going on holiday and drinking your chai lattes. But there we are. I do know. I know that giving up your morning coffee in Starbucks or whatever isn't going to be a difference between making a deposit or not. But I do find an awful lot of young people who say, I can't save up, I can't afford something. I completely accept that the ratio of what a cost of a home is pretty much across the country, but certainly in the southeast where we're sitting right now, is so much greater than it was in my day. I mean, it was already sky high on my day, but certainly my parents' day. But at the end of the day, an awful lot of people who did buy in days gone past, in years gone by, they would have given up everything else. There were no foreign holidays. They weren't buying new stuff. They didn't have new gadgets. They didn't do a lot of things. They didn't go out to eat, and they saved up to buy. And a lot of people go, I expect to eat out 3 times a week, go on foreign holidays. I've got my latest iPhone. I get my latte in my Starbucks. Oh, I've got no money to save to rent, to after my rent to buy a home. I'm just saying a little bit more managing of women who spend £30 every 2 weeks on having their nails done. Don't tell me that you've got no money. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I refuse to accept that. She said with her ratty nails. But there we are. I can't. The thought of having all that done. Oh, anyway. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 if you want to have a rant about younger generation. I'm always pleased to hear it. Let's also talk about the unions threatening to spread bin strikes across the country. Union workers in Birmingham overwhelmingly voted to reject a deal to end the bin strikes. They've been going on since early March. Extraordinary report I saw this morning that the cost of cleaning up the bins, the rubbish bins and the overloaded bin bags around the city right now would be in the region of £200 million, because you've got to get it somewhere. It's the normal routine of them being collected every day, and then because you're superseding that and more rubbish is being added all the time, you're looking at a multi-million-pound cost. And by the way, guess who's going to pay it? Oh, the taxpayers of Birmingham, who've already seen a massive hike in their council tax because of total abject mismanagement by Birmingham City Council over many, many years.
And also, then you've got the pest control, because now there are rats all over Birmingham from the fact that it's full of rubbish. I mean, it's extraordinary where this comes from. So a couple of waste recycling and collection officer jobs were cut off.
Well, it's about, there's a dispute in terms of how many. I always hate it with these disputes, because the union will say one thing and then sources from the council will say another. Why don't they just put what are the facts on the table and let us decide?
Yeah, I found it hard to work out exactly.
Is it 17 or is it eight of them? But they're basically removing a particular role to cut costs.
Exactly, and the suggestions there's only 17 of them. Other reports say 150. But the idea that such a modest number of people, over £8,000, can bring an entire city to a halt.
That's the point of trade unions.
Right, but I mean, it's pretty alarming that they haven't met in the middle. And for the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, who is close to Unite the Union, the union representing
They're all
them,
close to Unite. They're a big funder.
They simply refused to accept the offer, which she reportedly pleaded in the room with them to take. And then she said she'd called in the army, but actually it's just 3 people that work in the armed forces doing logistics from Whitehall.
I have to say, what I could not work out, I'm all in favour. If you want to send the army and just get them on...
I would.
That's what's necessary to do, because it is an emergency. It's a health emergency. But the idea that you need anyone... I mean, I'm sorry, I could run the logistics of removing those in. Send in lorries, right? Pick up the bin bags and take them to wherever you take them to. I don't think that's a logistics issue, isn't it? It's kind of basic, isn't it?
Yeah, you need the staff, I suppose. That's
the
whole
staff,
point.
But I mean, again, like, she can't. Isn't that part of the problem? The fact that the local council can't even do this without the military. I'm all in favour of the military getting involved and doing the grunt work, because they are really good at getting stuff done.
Yeah, I suppose the argument would go that people that signed up to fight for their country didn't sign up to clean up excrement in the streets of Birmingham. But ultimately, it's an emergency, and
they're about like the last only functioning public service. Thank you, gents and ladies.
And also, it's awful for anybody that lives there. But also, is a question of some people. You see some of the piles in the streets. Could they not? I would drive to the tip if rather than put it outside my front door.
No, apparently people haven't been able to, and the tips have been full, and
Well, Joe Lycett, the Birmingham comedian, has been encouraging people to, please God, go to the tip.
I was thinking, I spoke to one of my bin men this morning. They were collecting the bins this morning. I mean, I usually don't. They're very nice lads. And I just said, you're not going on strike. They said, no plan. I went, thank God for that. It's bad enough already in our street. But I have to say, I was thinking with our house, right, OK, if they did, we would have to have a better system with the amount of stuff that's just dumped in, that's loose. It's like, these things matter. And especially, I mean, one thing actually people in Birmingham are lucky about, it's not hot weather. If this was happening in July or August, in an unusual summer for Britain, then that would be quite a different matter. Let's talk, just before we go to break, let's talk about what's been going on in our prisons there. This horrific attack by Hashem Abedi, the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber, but involved in the plot. His attack at the weekend on 3 prison officers, one stabbed in the face and the throat, one stabbed in the back, burnt with hot oil. Again, big question marks being raised about this man, basically in a sort of special unit within a jail, in a high security jail, but allowed to use the kitchen, allowed to make his own meals. I mean, this has now been changed apparently. Oh, who thought it might be a bad idea that someone who's a terrorist, by the way, is already serving additional years on his sentence, which was originally 55 years, additional years. For an attack on a prison officer, that he should have access to sharp objects, able to fashion a knife out of a metal tray, they believe, and to hot oil. I mean, this is genuinely insane. Well, Ian Atchison, who's an expert and in fact, he was the man the prison governor, the man behind this move to put these Islamist extremist terrorists behind in separate units. He says he should be isolated because even if it turns him mad, he says, to protect the staff, it is untenable that this man is not kept in isolation, kept in his cell. And we've got prison officers fearing being beheaded by extremist terrorists behind bars. And there's thought that the hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury is suspected of inspiring this attack, and he's been moved out of the jail. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, pointed out yesterday that he'd been talking to prison officers, and 45% of prisoners at one jail in HMP Whitemoor now identify as Muslim. The vast majority of those are conversions while inside, and there have been numerous reports confirming this, that actually people are forced to convert. Basically, if you convert, you get our protection. If you don't convert, you're in trouble. If you don't eat halal, if you don't obey the rules that the Islamists, not the Islamist groups, insist on, you're going to have a very, very dangerous time behind bars. Now, I'm sorry, this is unacceptable.
Yeah, and the suggestion is that these prisons are becoming breeding grounds, not just for people converting to Islam, but for Islamism, which is incredibly dangerous. It's terrifying that, when these people, the ones that will be released, that you could have more terrorists rather than fewer.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're getting access to people who are, a low-level criminal on his many repeat offences, often mental health problems, often drug problems, and then people are sort of pushed down this line. And we've seen this in previous attacks, people who have been converted behind bars.
Exactly, and I think the way that they're treating this is unacceptably weak. I mean, look at these two Abedis. Now, both of them were born in Manchester. Their parents came from Libya, but they were born here.
Asylum seekers.
So you can't deport them. They are only British. But what you should do, as far as I'm concerned, they should be in solitary confinement. Because the idea he'd already...
Well, one of them's dead, thank God. But
the fact that he'd already attacked a police officer, a prison officer,
nothing to discuss at that point.
And then he's been allowed to do it again. I mean, I certainly don't share his views, but Tommy Robinson, they saw justice to put in solitary confinement. So how can you judge it's appropriate for someone like that?
No, but he's in solitary confinement for his own safety because of Islamists behind bars. Yeah. But the point is the prison authorities have lost control of prisons, and it is untenable that other prisoners, we put them behind bars. We don't put them there to be feared for their lives. So that's not acceptable. But also, crucially, more importantly, prison officers, we cannot... How could you possibly be expected to go to work with the threat of that happening to you every day? That is unacceptable.
I read an interview with the head of the body that represents prison officers last week, and he was saying about how they're so understaffed, about how discipline is so weak, and about how they often live in terror. And actually, one of the problems they have is that because they're not getting quality prison officers, they are behaving with inmates in a way that is not acceptable. All sorts of drugs get into these prisons. It messes with people's heads. You have the gang problems, and they're out of control. Not to mention, going back to the cost of public services, lots of these prisons are falling apart, so they're not able to facilitate their job properly.
And again, prisoners often kept behind bars 23 hours a day, just in their cell 23 hours a day. People might say, why not? Well, because actually that does not promote good things, and also that's why they're all doing drugs. If I was going to be in prison for a long stretch, and let's face it, it'll probably happen at some point.
I've been calling it for years.
Absolutely, I would 100% be on skunk. That'd be the only way of getting through. I'm sorry, it's a completely rational thing for these prisoners to do. They're not getting up at 7 o'clock, doing a day's work, and working and learning a new skill, things like that. They're not doing anything useful. And that's why, what a surprise, when they come out, guess what they do? Go back to crime. So much more to talk about, so much I want to hear from you from any of the topics we're talking about. Do also want to talk about that all-female Blue Origin space flight. What an embarrassment. I mean, it was an all hair extension space flight, as far as I could tell. All hair extension and Botox space flight. Genuinely an embarrassment to every woman on the sodding planet. We'll talk about that up next. Want to get to your calls, want to get to your messages.